Dr. Quinn Wang. Quinn Wang is not just a doctor. She's a lot more than just a doctor. She went to Duke and she's UCSF-trained. She's a cataract surgeon, ophthalmologist, with expertise in entrepreneurship, telemedicine, and surgical innovation. She's a two-time startup founder who is currently building remote eye exams via Quadrant Eye. Her other interests include digital health mentorship, gender equality and advocacy, and backcountry skiing. Welcome, Dr. Quinn Wang.
Can you please share your screen, Dr. Wang?
Yeah, thank you, Yuli, for that intro. And let me go ahead and share my screen here. Share, present. Okay, great. So as Yuli mentioned, my name is Dr. Quinn Wang, and I am really honored to have the opportunity to speak with everyone today. It's great to be amongst other doctors who are multifaceted, and was really happy to be able to hear from the previous three speakers. So again, my background is that I'm a Duke and UCSF-trained cataract surgeon. I'm based in San Francisco, and I'm currently working on Quadrant Eye. And the mission ultimately is to take all of eye care remote. I also serve as advisor to a few digital health startups in the area, and I'm really proud to be mentoring a couple of young women who I think will go on to become leaders in their fields. So I am pretty informal. Most of the time I prefer to go by Quinn, and I'm really excited to be giving this keynote talk for a number of reasons. The main one is that this is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. Like, I'm pretty open about the fact that I've struggled with my personal and professional identity beyond the two letters behind my name, beyond being an MD, beyond being a physician. And so today I feel really lucky to be speaking from this metaphorical space that I like to think of as like a traffic circle intersection. At the intersection of one of those behemoth intersections of 6 to 7 giant roads that represent my diverse interests. And a lot of these interests, I'm sure, intersect with the interests of those in the audience and my fellow speakers. So, I mean, after all, this talk is called Not Just a Doctor. So taking a step back, I think a lot of us go into medicine because we want to help others. There's a lot of appeal to being able to contribute positive momentum toward making the world better. My father is a physician, and I grew up being able to read the letters and holiday cards that his patients wrote to him. And I was really impressed that this awkward guy, who I knew as my dad, was kind of a hero to a lot of these folks. He made a positive impact on their lives, and that made an impression on me. At the same time, though, going into medicine is not an easy decision. As all of you know, it's a long road, and it's costly in a lot of different ways. To put it another way, it's a huge sacrifice, and like it's a big ask for people in their late teens and early 20s to commit to that sort of a road. For example, one of the young women I mentor, we meet weekly, and every week she asks me some variation of the question, should I go to med school? And, you know, I don't have the answer for her. The answer is different for everyone, but a lot of the anxiety comes from the fear that if you go into medicine, you don't have time to pursue your other interests or even discover those interests. You don't have time to grow into like the multifaceted person you want to be, because you're so busy and overworked all the time. And I understand that very well. I had those same questions myself, and I grew up And there was a long period of time in my life where I didn't see my dad for more than a few hours at a time. And during those few hours, oftentimes he was really tired, or he was studying for boards or another certification exam, or fielding really scary sounding pages and then disappearing to go to the hospital. And so I was like, you know, he impacts people's lives in a positive way, but he also has given up a lot. And I don't know him that well because he's usually really busy. Obviously, I decided to go to medical school, and I'm happy about that. But it was also a painful experience beyond the academic rigor of it. I spent most of my time studying, most of my time at the hospital, and I watched a lot of my friends who were not in medicine go through a lot of different interesting jobs, doing cool projects, and starting to make real money. So it was a little bit hard to swallow, and I felt like a square. I felt a little bit like a cog in the system. I wanted to do cool projects. I wanted to live abroad for a few years. I wanted to write a book or two, but I couldn't, right? Because I had committed to this path, and I felt a little bit resentful about it. What makes all of this extra difficult is that doctors are often pigeonholed and sometimes villainized by those both outside and inside of medicine. I would say to much of the general public, doctors are seen as quite wealthy and privileged, and kind of sit atop an ivory tower, very far from the ills and struggles of society. And one thing that really encapsulates this for people is our really pristine and impractical white coats, like, which in fact are like fomites, right? But a lot of people don't realize that. So doctors are taught to conform to that pristine, sometimes bland and removed image. And a lot of us believe in it and think it is the correct way to present ourselves. And it's really interesting because this leads to a bit of a strange paradox in which a lot of doctors don't trust their colleagues who deviate from this presentation, a very like buttoned up, wearing the white coat, quite respectful, don't really step out of line. And so they view their colleagues who take the time to pursue outside interests or do side hustles as like less legit and in the medical field for the wrong reasons. They question these doctors' devotion to their patients and their profession, and question the intellectual integrity of these folks. So ultimately, I think a lot of physicians see other physicians who are entrepreneurial or public facing in a non-academic way as sellouts. And the most salient example is the distrust and disdain that some folks might have toward physicians who go into industry, pharmaceutical, biotech, insurance, tech, and etc. But I personally am a little bit confused about why they're seen as sellouts, right? Because a lot of doctors choose an alternative path for more professional or personal freedom. So I really like this image because it has a lot of relevance in this day and age. And to me, it is a powerful signal of something that happens in medicine, and that is silencing. What I see is a lot of doctors being prevented by their institutions or employers from speaking out about what they believe in. And this is particularly prominent when it comes to political statements. And this applies to all levels of training, education, and employment. And personally, I think it's a little bit outrageous because it silences a lot of voices that bring a lot of life and equity into the medical fields. And actually many of my favorite med Twitter accounts actually are anonymous. And I think that's quite unfortunate because they make statements that are quite insightful about politics and culture that can really contribute to the conversation. And I think that these statements are often informed by experiences that are unique to working in medicine, and they deserve to be celebrated rather than hidden away, because they're a perfect representation of our humanity and diversity as physicians. But most people don't get to see that because they're hidden behind anonymous Twitter handles and anonymous blogs. So as a result of all this silencing, it's really easy for the general public, again, to perceive physicians as quite buttoned up and rule followers, sometimes clownfish, swimming around in circles. It's also quite easy as a physician to feel this way to the bone. There's really a lot of burnout and dissatisfaction with the way that our healthcare system is set up and what it's become. So being trapped in a maze of EMR, EHR, insurance, and academic and administrative restrictions, compounded nowadays with PPE shortages and waves of public distrust, it's really enough to drive most reasonable people a little bit crazy, and much less folks who have sacrificed their 20s for the privilege of taking care of others. So personally, I really dislike being boxed in by societal expectations and misconceptions about doctors, many of which tend to be reinforced by traditional medical institutions. I think at the end of the day, as demonstrated by the folks here, doctors are clearly nuanced human beings who have desires and face hardships just like anyone else. In fact, a lot of the hardships we face are intimate, soul-crushing, miraculous, and ultimately transformative. I've personally learned and accepted through many mistakes, some private, others public, that being a doctor means that I'm a human being who deserves to have my opinions heard, who has ideas that are just as valid as any other experts, regardless of my level of training, number of years of experience, ability to speak cross-industry lingo, or the size of my professional network. So I would argue that what matters is not your degree or my degree, but the degree to which someone cares about making things work well, and the degree to which someone cares about having patients have better experiences in their times of need. In my particular instance, I'm interested in meeting those needs in the area of eye care, especially during pandemic times. And I think that technology, if implemented correctly, can make things so much better for doctors and patients alike. And it's so great to hear about solutions that other doctors are coming up with. And I would love to make eye care more efficient, more accessible, and less intimidating for folks. And I don't think remote eye care or any of the digital health solutions that move toward automation will threaten doctors' job security. Rather, I think they will really enhance an individual doctor's ability to provide meaningful care. But that's only if we speak up and take an active role in the way these digital health solutions are built. And again, a lot of that comes from taking more of an active and entrepreneurial approach. So it's clear, even just based on the folks in this virtual room, that doctors are all of these things on this list. They're multifaceted human beings. I personally know a lot of doctors who are trying to break away from that image of themselves as white coat villains or cogs who are okay with putting their heads down, even when things are infuriating and don't make that much sense. Like I said, doctors are all the things on this list and more. They're dreamers and leaders and innovators. And beyond this, I think the question is how each and every one of us can break free from our buttoned up images and start embracing these like multifaceted parts of ourselves. And it's really not obvious how to do that. And for every doctor, it's a little bit different. But it's probably safe to say that it begins with not being afraid of making a little bit of noise to get out of your comfort zone. And this is definitely not something that medical training or education encourages, let alone teaches, like out of the box thinking and kind of like questioning the way things are done. So I would say the way to do it is to put yourself out there nowadays digitally. It's important and really fruitful to get on Twitter and LinkedIn and explore communities that you might not be familiar with, and interact with people who are working with things that you're not familiar with or might even be intimidating for you. Personally, for me, I started building my tech understanding and network through Alpha, which is a startup that's building a really robust online platform for women in tech. And I found Alpha through LinkedIn, actually. And I also came across Yuli and Innovator MD via LinkedIn. So I kind of want to end it on this. Doctors are powerful, and being a physician is a privilege. Being a physician with outside interests and talents is, I would argue, a superpower. So whether you're working on the front lines when it comes to COVID, or working behind the scenes, or keeping your head down in clinic every day, you as a doctor have the power and knowledge to enact meaningful change in healthcare. So this change will benefit you, your patients, your friends, and your families. And it doesn't matter if you don't already know how to build a device, you don't already know how to navigate the FDA regulations, and if you don't know how to write a single line of code. I built Quadrant Eye using completely no-code tools. I just cared enough to do it, and I still care enough to keep making it better. And it's been really rewarding in a number of ways. So at the end of the day, I believe that doctors, if they're willing, have got what it takes to make cool and impactful things. We've got so many skills. We've got the grit to go through like at least 10 years of really grueling training, if not more, for those who decided to go on to really intense specialties. So for those of you who are thinking of, or who've already put yourselves out there, for example, pitching your startup, I really have the utmost respect for you, and I'm cheering you on. And the truth is, the only way to attain a better healthcare future, one that I think all of us want for ourselves and our families, is to make it for ourselves. So thank you for your time, and happy to take any questions.